What's up, Falcon fans? On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Atlanta Falcons. If you guys like this type of content, hit that like button. If you guys hate this type of content, hit that dislike button or we'll hurt your boy's feelings. Well, maybe just a little bit. But also, if you want to do a huge favor for your boy, by hitting that subscribe button will help out the empire grow tremendously. So on that note, let's dive into the 7 categories I have for today's episode. Let's get started with category number 1. Home field advantage versus home field advantage. So obviously the Atlanta Falcons will travel to Raymond James Stadium. So I'm going to give my points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they're going to be very loud. So now let's talk about category number 2. Coaches versus coaches. Arthur Smith versus Todd Bowles. And let's start out with Todd Bowles first. His football career is legendary. As a player, he won a Super Bowl championship ring. And as an executive, he also won a Super Bowl championship ring. And as a defensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he won a Super Bowl championship ring as well. And that's the type of pedigree he just shows you how he knows how to win games consistently enough and winning the big ones. So most Falcon fans know him from being the head coach for the New York Jets in 2015 through 2018. And we all know that he took to the Jets 10-game wins in 2015. Of course, they did not make it to the playoffs, but they should have. And then after that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made him the defensive coordinator 2019 through 2021. And then in 2022, they made him the head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So obviously, he turned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive program all the way around. And his first year as a head coach, he won first place in the NFC South Division with an 8-9 record, and they lost to the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC Wild Card game. But even still, it's pretty good that he took them to the playoffs. And now what's very interesting is that a lot of people, including myself, said that they were not going to win a lot of games this year because they were going to be very terrible. They're going to lose a lot of people because of Tom Brady and how they're going to work with Baker Mayfield. I'm very shocked that he's turned Baker Mayfield into what he was when he was with the Cleveland Browns back in 2018 through 2019 or something like that. I mean, no one expected them to beat the Minnesota Vikings. No one expected them to beat the New Orleans Saints. And so for them to be 3-2 right now in first place in this NFC South, he's doing a really great job. And also, they have a brand new first-time offensive coordinator in Dave Canales, who I'm really a fan of because previously he was with the Seattle Seahawks in the passing game and as the quarterback coach. And he did a great job for Geno Smith. And I have been a fan ever since his work. And so now let's talk about Arthur Smith. At this point in juncture, you guys know how I feel about Arthur Smith. I've been explaining it in a couple videos now about my rants and how much I'm very disappointed in him because I know he can do better, but unfortunately he does not take full advantages where the Atlanta Falcons need to be, and we kind of fall out flat. So on that note, I'm going to give my points to Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So now let's talk about category number 3. Buccaneers quarterback and wide receiver versus the Falcons secondary. So let's talk about the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield is doing an okay job in Tampa. He's not excellent, but he's not bad either. He's not turning the ball over like compared to last season with the Carolina Panthers, where he had 8 interceptions compared to 3 interceptions right now. He's finding a lot of ways to get his wide receivers open down the field. He's averaging 200 passing yards per game. He averaged 30 plus attempts, and then when it comes to completions, he's averaging 20 completions per game. And when it comes to the touchdown ratio, he has 7 right now, and the only time he did not throw a touchdown was last week against the Detroit Lions, compared to the Carolina Panthers last year where he played 7 games and threw 10 touchdowns. So far he's doing a lot better right now. He's averaging 1 touchdown per game, and when it comes to the run attack, he has 25 carries and averages 5 carries per game and has 67 yards total in the run game. So he's very mobile, so that's another plus that's going for him. So now let's talk about the wide receiving core. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both have over 300 receiving yards. Mike Evans had 3 touchdowns. Chris Godwin does not have any. But, Chris Godwin in total has, 27 receptions. And Mike Evans has in total 24 receptions. And they both average, 5 receptions per game. And they also average 50 yards per game. And mostly for both of them, they're over targeted 8 times per game as well. And when it comes to the other wide receiving core, they have Trey Palmer, who has 2 touchdowns, and Devin Tompkins, he also has 1 touchdown to boot. So they have other wide receiving core that they can throw to, and they will definitely get the touchdown as well. So now let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons secondary. So far, the Atlanta Falcons secondary has really stepped up the game. They're only allowing the opposing quarterback to throw over 280 yards per game, averaging 2 touchdowns per game against us. And of course, last week it was definitely a monopoly because of how the special teams and the offensive side of the ball was giving the opponents great field position where they can score easily points. Even though the defense has done a great job in stopping them on third down conversions, because Sam Howell scored 3 touchdowns, and it could have been a lot more, but the defense did what they had to do to making sure that they limit all those mistakes and turnovers that the offense did, to make sure it wasn't more of a 24 final game status, because it could have been a lot worse. They handled Terry McLaurin. He only caught 6 receptions for 81 total yards, no touchdowns. And all of the other secondary did a really great job in man-to-man coverage to making sure that Sam Howell did not go ham with the other wide receiving core, because they hardly made any plays until the very end when it came into the red zone. But besides that, I'm going to give my points to the Atlanta Falcons secondary, because they can definitely handle the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield as well. So now let's talk about category number 4. Buccaneers running back, tight end, O-line versus the Falcons front 7. And let's start out with the Buccaneers. Their rushing attack is ranked dead last in the NFL with 394 total rushing yards. They only have 1 rushing touchdown, with the second-year running back in Rashawn Wright, who's only averaging 3 yards per running attempt and has the average of 40 yards per game. And when it comes to the offensive line in the passing game, they do keep up Baker Mayfield up. He only has 5 total sacks so far, and they do give him enough time to throw in the passing game, so that's pretty good news for them. And when it comes to their tight end core, Caden Ottoman is only the best tight end so far in their arsenal, with over 100 yards and 1 touchdown. So now let's talk about the Falcons front 7. So far, the Atlanta Falcons front 7 has done an excellent job in stopping the opposing running attack to get over 100 total rushing yards in the past 2 games. Since the last time they allowed 105-yard rushing total team was against the Jacksonville Jaguars back in London. So when it comes to the rushing attack, they're doing a pretty good job. They're getting after the quarterback. They're bringing him down. They're hitting him a lot more consistently. But the problem is sacks. Now, obviously, it was a monopoly last week because the Washington Commanders' offensive line is not that great. So they got 5 sacks out of that, because they do average 5 sacks per game they allow. But when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their offensive line is a lot much better unit, where they don't allow Baker Mayfield to get hit, get touched, or get sacked down to the ground. So that's going to be a challenge in that department. And so far in this 2023 season, the Falcons have not been doing a great job in containing the tight ends at all. But I feel like the Falcons are going to have a little bit more easier time, because there are not a lot of star players on the Buccaneers side when it comes to the tight ends. So on that note, I'm going to give my points to the Atlanta Falcons. So now let's talk about category number 5. Falcons quarterback and wide receiver versus the Buccaneers secondary. So now let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. So far, I've been very impressed with Desmond Ridder's throwing mechanics inside of the pocket and outside the pocket, and I will explain that more in greater detail in a later video. But for right now, I'm just going to give you the basic generic of that type of scenario. But there's 2 things I want to talk about for the negative part. Is the play calling by Arthur Smith sometimes that does not help Desmond Ridder out in certain situations. And then number 2 is that the offensive line is not giving Desmond Ridder enough time to really sit and poise in the pocket to see everything down the field and everything in motion when the ball is snapped, because he's averaging 3 to 4 sacks per game, and that's a recipe for failure, because he's getting tackled for losses, he's getting hurried, and he's getting quarterback hits, and that's not going to help him develop properly. So when it comes to the wide receiving core, they do a pretty good job. Drake London is finding his way right now. He's averaging 80 yards per game. He's making incredible plays to making sure he moves the chain. Mac Holland is trying to do his thing, but when it comes to the other wide receivers, they're not really doing their thing like we were hoping they would. So let's talk about the Buccaneers secondary. This is very interesting because Jamel Dean, Ryan Neal, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Carlton Davis III are really great secondary for them, and surprisingly they gave up over 300 passing yards to the Lions and to the Vikings, but everybody else, they kept them under 280 yards per game, so that's kind of an anomaly as well. But I do feel like they're just a better secondary core compared to our wide receiving core and to the quarterback as well. So I'm going to give my points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So now let's talk about category number 6. Falcons running back, tight end, O-line versus the Buccaneers front 7. So let's start off with the Falcons. Our running attack is not bad. We're not ranked in the top 5 anymore. Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier are trying to do their thing, but the problem is the offensive line is not giving them enough time to create the holes where they can go through. But also, we're not really running the ball like we're supposed to for some reason, and I really don't know why. So when it comes to the tight end position, that is the golden goose that lays the golden eggs for Desmond Ridder, because he really likes to use the tight end down the middle of the field. Now, with Jonnu Smith is the second leading receiving when it comes to 282 receiving yards and 1 total touchdown and 14 first down conversions, and Kyle Pitts is the third leading receiving and 251 total receiving yards and 1 touchdown and has 13 first down conversions. So he really heavily relies on the tight ends to move the chain, and it shows in game day every single tape. So when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front 7, they are really strong when it comes to the pass rush. They have 15 total sacks, so they get after the quarterback. They know where to hit him, inside, outside, and of course, you know, they got the nose tackle in Vita Vea, who has 2.5 sacks already. They have Logan Hall. They have the first-round draft pick out of Pittsburgh, Cansey, and then they got the guy from Washington, Joe. I don't know how you say his last name. Then, you know, the 2 linebackers and Devin White, who is a blitz master, and then Levante David, who has been an old Buckhead for a long time, and they got Shaq Barrett as well. So I'm going to give my points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because at the end of the day, if you can affect the quarterback with pressuring him and sacking him more than he needs to be, you're going to win the outcome more likely than not. So now let's talk about category number 7. Special teams versus special teams. I think both of them have really great punters. Both of them have good place kickers. For the Falcons, Younghoe Koo, so far he has been 90% accurate. The only bad game he had was against the Detroit Lions. For the Buccaneers, Chase McLaughlin, his only bad game was against the Chicago Bears, but he also has a 90% accuracy as well. So I'm going to give my points to both teams. So now let's talk about the final verdict. For the final prediction, I actually have the Atlanta Falcons winning this game barely, 20-17. Obviously, this is a NFC South divisional rival game, and anything can happen, so you can throw away all the stats, all the paperwork, because at the end of the day, it's all about who wants it more. Hopefully, the Falcons won't disappoint your boy and make me look like an idiot. So on that note, if you guys lasted this long to the very end of the episode, thank you so much for taking your own personal time and day to watch these Falcon content videos. I have more videos up here on the screen for you guys if you guys will want to check it out. So, what do Falcons do? Rise up. Until the next episode, show love and peace to the world, and peace.